Welcome to Dairy Stream, brought to you by the Dairy Business Association and Edge Dairy Farmer Cooperative, sister organizations that fight for sensible dairy policy in Wisconsin and Washington, D.C. Dairy Stream focuses on issues affecting the dairy community and our customers. Hi, I'm your host, Mike Austin. Well, welcome to another edition of Dairy Stream, as we raise our voice to encourage you to find your voice in the legislative process. We're doing that today by sharing a conversation with two elected officials who've made a real commitment to be a representative voice for the constituents in the state of Wisconsin and are known for being a good advocate for Wisconsin agriculture. Today's guests are Wisconsin State Representative Dave Considine, who represents Assembly District 81 and who will join us after our break. But right now, we want to talk to Wisconsin State Senator Howard Marklein, who represents State District 17 and is the chairman of the Senate Ag Committee. And we're really glad to have him on hand for that. And Senator Marklein, want to talk a little bit about getting involved in the political process, especially being an agricultural voice. But first of all, for our listeners, can you tell us a little bit about your background, your passion for agriculture, and why you've been really a leading voice for agricultural issues, including dairy?
Was raised on a dairy farm, and from the time I was 5 years old, I was in the barn in the milk house, and agriculture isn't something that I have to act about. I live a mile from our home farm here in rural Spring Green, and I understand agriculture. I understand the challenges. I understand the incredible benefits. I didn't realize when I was growing up on that dairy farm how much I would learn in terms of life skills that have been helpful, for me throughout my lifetime. And, my dad passed away unexpectedly a number of years ago. He was still milking when he died. And so I never had a chance to really say thanks, Dad, for, bringing me up the way you did on the farm. But I'm certainly very grateful for all I learned on that farm.
And one of those things, obviously, was your work ethic. And we talk a lot about agriculture and the commitment that producers have to their animals and the land and really kind of being in that zone. But to move out of that, for some people, it's almost an uncomfortable experience to get outside of the fence line. But for you obviously decided to go to Madison, be an elected official, and now do serve as the chairman of the Senate Ag Committee. Can you take us back? What really made you, first of all, motivated to run for office, and why did you want to make that commitment?
I spent my career in the private sector. I'm a CPA, and so I worked. And even as a CPA, I worked with a lot of farmers. We had a lot of farm clients over my career. So I still, even as a CPA, maintain close contact with the agriculture community. But I sold out as a partner back in around '08, and I had no political experience whatsoever, none. And I guess I was just a year or so later, just concerned about the direction that our state was going in and also the direction of our country, to be honest with you. And I said, you know what, I can sit here and complain or I can do something about it. And so I decided to run for office again with no political experience whatsoever. And again, that work ethic that you talked about, helped me incredibly, because what I did is I just worked. I just worked my butt off and was successful in winning that first race for state assembly. So, and then and I was got reelected in the assembly and then ran for Senate. And then a couple of years ago, when Senator Terry Moulton, who was the former chair of the Senate Agriculture Committee, when Senator Moulton retired, I asked for that committee. And so my district in southwest Wisconsin, it's a very agriculturally dependent district. And so the majority leader appointed me to chair the Senate Ag Committee. And again, given my background with agriculture, with farming, I'm happy to be able to serve in the Senate and represent farmers on that committee.
We are speaking with Wisconsin State Senator Howard Marklein, and he is the current chairman of the Senate Ag Committee. And as you said, you started, with no experience at all, which I'm sure was a little bit nerve-wracking, and obviously had to build your confidence and your knowledge as you went along. But your current position as the chair of the Senate Agriculture Committee, it shared a little bit of why you wanted that post. But what do you think you bring to that post, and why do you think you're a good man for that position?
I stay connected to the farming community. I talk to farmers. I'm trying to think of the last day I didn't talk to at least one farmer. I just do. I get calls from them. My neighbors. I rent my cropland out to a neighbor that farms. So I stay pretty connected to the farming community, and which is serves me well. And and I also again I understand them. I understand what's going on. I understand in real time. Sometimes I think people in the legislature may respond to situations as they're portrayed in the media, which isn't real time. Sometimes it's there's a delay, and I stay in touch with our farmers regularly. I understand the issues, and I have a very good relationship with the business organizations that represent our farmers. The Dairy Business Association, the Farm Bureau, the cattlemen, pork producers, vegetable growers, all of the ag groups. I've got a very, very good relationship with them, and I think they appreciate the work that I do. They know that I know how to get things done.
Senator Marklein, you bring up a good point. I think the ag community and farmers in particular have been more active in recent years in telling their stories, being active through the legislative process. Can you kind of explain to us why you feel the farmer's voice is so valuable, and, when it comes to policy in Wisconsin, how important it is for them to be involved in that dialogue?
There's a saying in Madison that, and it's kind of a joke, but the reality is there's a lot of truth to it, and that is that if you're not at the table, you're on the menu. Mm-hmm. And there's unfortunately some truth to that statement. So, and that's where, farmers and others, but, farmers especially, they need to be part of the conversation. And I think that, we've got fewer and fewer people farming today than there was 30, 40, 50, 100 years ago, okay? So it's more important than ever that farmers stay engaged and have their voice, heard. And what I mentioned, the ag groups are a very, very important voice for farmers. But, whether I listen to the Dairy Business Association or listen to the Farm Bureau or listen to, any of the ag groups, it's nice to have a farmer look me in the eye and tell me what this bill means to them or why we need to do something. So, and I just encourage farmers, I know that farmers are busy people. They've got enough other stuff going on, and in many cases they're the town chairman or on their school board, and they're incredibly busy people anyway. But staying involved and informed on some of these legislative issues and policy issues is incredibly important.
Wisconsin State Senator Howard Marklein is our guest. He's with us for a couple of moments before we take our break here on Dairy Stream. And you did mention the value of face-to-face conversations and that one-on-one. But, as you said, it's not always something that a producer can do. It doesn't really work into their time frame. So what are some of the things you'd say might be a good alternative to engage with lawmakers? I mean, tell me you should write letters, you should email, get on the phone. What do you recommend?
I would recommend that the farmers, subscribe to any electronic communications that come out of our office and that sort of thing, just to keep abreast of what's going on. And relationships are incredibly important. Don't wait until there's a crisis to develop a relationship with somebody. If your industry is going to need something, some input at some point in time, that relationship ought to be cultivated on an ongoing basis. And I appreciate getting a phone call. I appreciate getting an email from farmers just to touch and base and how things are going. And, I can reach out to some of our farmers too, just to see how things are going in different industries and stuff and in the farms. But that dialogue is so important on an ongoing basis, so that when there is that piece of legislation that needs to get passed to help our farmers have got a great connection with their senator and with their state representative.
Well, certainly we've enjoyed our dialogue with you, State Senator Howard Marklein. And as we close, before we take our break here on Dairy Stream, I just want to ask, what if there's somebody out there that wants to take that next step? They want to make that commitment that you have over the years and actually run for office. What would your advice be, and where should he or she start?
I would get involved at any level of government that they feel comfortable, with. Our local town boards, county boards, school boards. I mean, there's all kinds of opportunities for our farmers to participate in government at a local level, and that's probably the best place to get started. And then you get a flavor for the procedural things and working through the committees and all that, and you become more informed on policies and how policies at the next level up affect your level. So again, I just I know there's fewer and fewer farmers, and our farmers need to be engaged. It's just incredibly important so that they advocate for what's going on here in rural America and our farms.
Certainly, he has his roots in agriculture and continues those close ties. He is the chairman of the Wisconsin Senate Agricultural Committee, and also he represents Senate District 17. We've been speaking with Wisconsin State Senator Howard Marklein. We thank him for his insight and his candor, and we'll get into more conversation in a couple of moments after this break on Dairy Stream.
Dairy Stream is brought to you by the Dairy Business Association and Edge Dairy Farmer Cooperative, sister organizations that fight for effective dairy policy in Wisconsin and Washington, D.C. As the most effective lobbying organization for dairy farmers and business partners in Wisconsin, the Dairy Business Association ensures that the interests of the dairy community are well represented in state and local government. Edge, one of the top dairy cooperatives in the country, provides farmers throughout the Midwest with a powerful voice, the voice of milk, in Congress, with customers, and within their communities. The Dairy Business Association and Edge Dairy Farmer Cooperative are proud to bring you Dairy Stream.
Well, welcome back to Dairy Stream. I'm Mike Austin. Nice to be chatting with Wisconsin State Senator Howard Marklein in our first segment of this podcast. And now joining us is Wisconsin State Representative Dave Considine, who represents Assembly District 81. Our focus today really is about getting your voice heard in Madison, and also, as Representative Considine did, getting involved in the process. And first of all, State Representative, thank you for being with us. And I know that you have an agricultural background, but maybe just for our listeners, you can tell us a little bit about that background, your passion for agriculture, and a little bit about your former farming operation.
I would love to, and thanks for having me. I was raised by one of the preeminent dairy goat farmers in the United States. He wrote the Dairy Goat Scorecard for judging purebred livestock dairy goat. And when I was in high school, we were milking 600 head on 2 farms. And upon graduation, I bought a farm in the Baraboo Bluff, proceeded to milk up to 140 head of goats full-time for 20-plus years. Plus, I had a 235-acre farm, and I still live on that. The land is all in Conservation Reserve Program. I also raised a flock of 70 ewes, had a few hogs, mostly for family use. Ran an apple orchard. We had 14 acres of apple orchard that I marketed on the farm, and squeezed cider. So it's one of those that were very common back then, small operations that was very diversified.
It certainly was. I think that's the key word you're talking about, diversification. And thank you for your commitment to agriculture as a producer and now as a representative of the agriculture community. And that's what we want to kind of focus in on. I mean, tell us a little bit about the transition from going from the farm to going to Madison. What really did motivate you to run for office, and what was that experience like?
I think I'm like a lot of farmers. I am passionate for my community. I've had roots in this community. My dad was actually went to school at Portage High School and lived near Cascade Mountain, if you know where that ski hill is.
Sure. Yeah.
That's where my dad grew up, and I'm just 4 miles from there down the bluff. So my roots are very deep in this community, like a lot of the farmers that I talk to are. And it was a passion for that and a passion for the beauty of the area in which I live, and just liking the people around me and wanting to have them have good and fair representation. And I think I had a unique view. We tend to be people who are experienced in a lot of different areas because we run our own small business and we balance the books and we advertise and are involved in salesmanship and playing with markets and adjusting how we do markets. And in addition to doing all the things that we do with the land and with our animals. And so I think it was representing those ideas. And more than anything else, I feel like a lot of people don't have just the plain old down-to-earth common sense that many farmers, dairy farmers have. That connection to the earth and to its cycles and to its root tends to give us, down-to-earth is definitely a word, but also just common sense. Like, let's find a practical solution to this. Let's quit our fighting. Let's quit worrying about bickering, or, the land is going to do what it's going to do, so I'm going to have to adapt to that, and I'm going to make it work. And that's kind of what farmers do, and the same thing's true with the animals. And so I wanted to take that idea to Madison, the idea that we can fix this, that I don't know it all, but I can get help, and I can figure it out, and I'm going to find a way to make this work.
We are speaking with the Wisconsin State Representative Dave Considine. And Dave, you covered this a little bit already, mentioning your experience in agriculture stuff, your work ethic, your business skills, management, passion, and also just plain old common sense. But how do you feel those skills and lessons you learned really helped you do a more than adequate job now in Madison?
Farmers tend to be listeners. They talk to each other. They're very willing to take ideas from the farmer down the road, and they'll go visit each other's farms and they'll see something that works. And, I'm going to go home and try that, even if some of their family members, their spouse or kids think they're crazy. I'm going to go home and give that a shot because that seems like a nice idea. And I think that openness to new ideas, that openness to looking at what others are thinking, not at all making a judgment about that's crazy, but being open to find a way in which that does make sense. And I find this is true of everybody that I know, have this element of reality and truth within them. They don't do things to be outlandish or to be crazy. And sometimes I don't even think they do things to be political. They do things because they think that really is maybe going to be a solution and it's going to solve the problem. And if we can listen to each other like that, and I think I've been able to do that in the legislature, to be able to say, hey, that part of what you have has merit. I really like that. Let's work on that. Let's take that little piece right now.
We are with Wisconsin State Representative Dave Considine, and we are talking about agriculture finding its voice in Madison. And from that perspective, Dave, why do you think it's so important that, farmers' voices are heard? And, especially when we talk about policy in Wisconsin, why do they need to share their message, to have their voice heard?
Farmers are one of the top three drivers of our economy. Without farming, we're in big-time trouble. And I think some of the others are big drivers are reliant upon that farming base that we have. Tourism wouldn't be very far if we didn't have the roads that we built to haul milk to market. And that's just one example of many that we could come up with about where the backbone came from agriculture, and the backbone is agriculture, and we keep building on that. And if we lose that infrastructure, if we lose those idyllic farms up on the top of the ridge or see the beef cattle on the grasslands, we lose a lot. And I think we would lose some tourism as well. People want to see life and vibrancy, and our farmers bring that. That's why it's really important that we have agriculture and that the people that produce that have their voice heard, because it's a very different voice. I know that until very recently, I was the only member of my caucus who had farmed. There were some that had a little further out generations, but I was the only one in our caucus who had farmed at all, and the other one had just been raised on the farm. There are very few people who bring that center ground mindset that I think a lot of farmers have. Bottom line is most of them are moderate people who just want to have good ideas happen and get done. That is the voice that I think I bring to Madison, but I think it's the voice of a whole lot of members of agriculture, whether it's dairy farmers or crop farmers or beef farmers or even a lot of the agribusinesses. They just want to see good things happen.
You are listening to Dairy Stream, brought to you by the Dairy Business Association and Edge Dairy Farmer Cooperative. Our conversation right now is with Wisconsin State Representative Dave Considine, who represents Assembly District 81, and our time going kind of quickly. So, Dave, just want to cover a couple of points. One is you talked about you talked about the need for farmers' voices to be heard and to share their voice, but how do they do that? How do you recommend farmers to engage with their lawmakers?
Be open to share those ideas. in your operation with Lawmakers. It doesn't mean you always have to go to Madison. It means having an inviting and open arm things to having us come to you. One of the things I started doing as ranking member of the Agriculture Committee in the Assembly was to arrange agriculture tours all over the state of Wisconsin, whether it was a cranberry farm or a ginseng farm or a dairy farm or a direct farm-to-market operation, or sometimes it was touring grass-fed livestock places, organic farmers, to CAFOs, toured a CAFO goat dairy. The list is endless that we went to tour and to learn from them, and they were open to that. And then feeling free to share. One question I always ask is, what do you think we should do? We can all say that it isn't going well right now, perhaps, but what's the solution? Help me find solutions, because farmers, I think, are good at brainstorming and at finding solutions and just being open to sharing what your perspective is.
By sharing, I mean, do we do that through emails, through social media, through one-on-one conversations? What do you think is the best venue for them to take?
If you have a really strong opinion about something and you want to influence it, I would say if you can get the legislator's direct number, get to the legislator, although our staff does a wonderful job, and talking with our staff. I know my staff is really open, and if people say, I really want to talk to Dave, they will refer them to me. And share personal stories. Don't be afraid to get somewhat emotional and to share something that's personal with you, because that's going to touch every legislator. Share those things that are in your heart and that bring emotion to the surface, because let's face it, we're all human beings and we respond to that.
Well, Representative Considine, we appreciate you sharing your thoughts with us today. And our final question deals with those producers that may want to follow in your footstep. If I'm a farmer who wants to run for office, can you give me some advice on ways to get involved and where he or she should start?
And I would begin by thinking, okay, maybe I should go to Madison sometime when the Farm Bureau or Farmers Union is coming down there, whatever you're a member of, or the corn growers, or I should volunteer to do that and get down and see how the process works. And maybe even watch a bill or an idea that you're passionate about get to the floor. And then just have as wide a nest of friends as you can have and openness. And ask them. Put yourself out there before you make an announcement or make a big deal about it, and see what people think and see what support you have, and then go from there. I happen to get a whole lot of people who said, yeah, please, I'm way behind it. And I think a lot of farmers would get that because of their connection to the community, their connection to the town and village people around them. They're usually connected with the businesses, and through their local schools, they're connected to things there. Just explore what people think about you doing that. And then, go for it and just be yourself. That was one thing I kept telling myself every time I would campaign. It's like, no, and one of the members of my campaign committee kept telling me, Dave, you're the candidate. You have to make this decision. You have to decide who you are and how this applies to you. And then we're just here to help you. And if you find people like that who will surround you, and then you'll make some mistakes, don't worry about it. Just keep being true to yourself. And taking that skill we talked about farmers having, we experiment with things, and okay, that I didn't work with that particular crop, but we'll try something else, and let yourself do that and not think of it as a failure, but as a learner, and people respect that and respond to it.
Well, we certainly respect and thank you for all the time and insights you've shared. We've been speaking with Wisconsin State Representative Dave Considine. He, along with Wisconsin State Senator Howard Marklein, have been our guests today as we've been focusing in on getting ways for you in the agriculture community to raise your voice and to encourage you to find your voice in the legislative process. I'm Mike Austin. Thank you very much for being with us today. Our producer is Joanna Guza. Always does a great job, and we thank her, and we thank you for listening to Dairy Stream. The Dairy Business Association and Edge Dairy Farmer Cooperative would like to thank you for listening to Dairy Stream. If you enjoyed listening to our podcast, please subscribe and rate Dairy Stream. We value your feedback. And if there's something you'd like to hear, just email us, podcast@dairyforward.com.